Hello, hello, hello. It is Stephanie here. Welcome back to episode 88 of the Rent to Rent Success podcast. You are in for a treat tonight. I am joined by Rod Shields. Rod Shields is an entrepreneur through and through. He's been investing in properties since he was a teenager. He's sold and he's had lots of other entrepreneurial businesses to make the money to invest in property. He sold a motorbike to buy his first property, aged just 19. I think I got that right there. He also owned a student HMO at the age of 19. And he's been investing in property for over 40 years and been through 5 downturns. So we've got a lot to talk about today. What I love to talk about is how people have built up their property wealth. And also you may find it surprising that such an experienced investor also does rent to rent. So we'll be talking about that too. But for now, welcome to the show, Rod Shields. It's amazing to have you with us.
Thank you very much. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, so I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
It's my pleasure. So, Rod, I would love to know, first of all, tell people a bit about you and how you got started in property.
Well, when we used to go to church, obviously, when we was a bit younger, my dad used to drive us around show homes, looking at brand new houses and looking in car showrooms, so me and my sister have always been into property and cars. It's a thing that we've always had. But my actual love of property came when I went to America at 16 years old. And me and my dad went over and I worked with my uncle, who's a property developer over there. He was a bus driver in the UK, but went over to America, became a very successful property developer. And I, at 16, was going over there, working with him, going and maintaining his houses. So I came back to the UK a few months later. I wanted to be a landlord. 2 things I took away. I wanted to be a landlord. And the other one I took away was pizza deliveries. I thought, what a fantastic idea, delivering pizzas. This is 1979. I thought the most brilliant idea. I was ahead of my time because I thought, and I even thought, why are we just delivering pizzas? Can't we just deliver other people's food? And the name, I named it Why Cook. And I wanted to open, at 16 years old, I wanted to open a business delivering food. This is Deliveroo and Just Eats 40 odd years ago, ahead of my time. But everybody rubbished me, said it was a stupid idea. So,
Yeah, no, that's great. And so tell us about, because you got inspired by your uncle. You said you described it as rich dad, poor dad. Your dad was the poor dad, and your uncle in America, who was a property investor, was the rich dad. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, my dad always, worked in a factory. He drove me to my interview to get a job in a factory. But my uncle, I saw the other way, the rich dad. There's another way of making money from property, passive income. My uncle taught me about buying a property and refinancing, getting your money out. So I think I would have still made it, but having my uncle there as that kind of influence, that really, really helped me. And that's why I've tried to encourage so many friends by being their rich dad, by being, telling there's another way besides, that 40 grand you're spending on that BMW. Why don't you use that as a deposit to buy that house? And you could possibly rent that, so basically you've got an appreciating asset, not a depreciating one, which is paying for your car. So I've always passed on the knowledge and tried to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great to be such an inspiration for others. But when you get there and you realize, actually, this is so simple compared with the other way where you work 40 hours a week for 40 years and then end up sometimes without an adequate pension at the end of it to enjoy life. This way, although there are challenges to property investment, it's so much more rewarding for most people. So tell us a bit about how you got started, because a lot of people might get that inspiration, might know that there's more is possible, but coming from humble beginnings and as a 19-year-old, how did you actually turn those ideas into action?
Well, being dyslexic, I've always read the Sunday Times, believe it or not, because it's got loads of pictures of houses I love and cars which I love. And it was there that I discovered number plates are worth a bit of money. Somebody at work was selling a motorbike a motorbike with a registration. It's a really short 1-digit registration, which is worth a bit of money. He didn't know it was worth a lot of money, but because of the knowledge I had picked up by reading that newspaper, I bought that. Oh, so I bought it for about £120, and I sold it for, I don't remember. It was well over a quarter of the deposit to buy my first property, which was an HMO. So yeah, having the right knowledge and reading the right newspaper made me realize that, there's opportunities everywhere. So I bought that. I think I was about 17. I bought that, sold it when I was 18. And I used that to fund my first HMO, which was, it was, what is it? Again, I wanted to buy a house when I was 16. I remember I mentioned before, I wanted to buy a house at 16. I didn't buy one until I was 19. That house I wanted to buy at 16, which was £9,000. When I eventually did buy it, was £13,000. So I've always known, wow, this is unbelievable. So I've always known the power of property, because that property that I bought for 13 went up to 26. So I've always known that. And I'm thinking, wow, why is everybody not doing this?
Yeah. So tell us, what year are we in here, Rod?
19 I think it's bought my house in 1981. I think it was 81 or 82. It was my first one. Yeah.
Wow. So you started off there in 1981. But the other thing that I was hearing there, which surprised me, is your first house is an HMO.
Yeah, well, I bought it as I bought it 3-bedroom house. I did, I continued to live at my mum's and dad's, and I rented it out. And at the time, I mentioned this before, rooms at that time were going for £15 per room. Mm-hmm. And I put a washing machine and a TV in the communal area, and that was unheard of in those days. Unheard of. Student accommodation was just very, very basic. So I basically got 25% more rent by offering these two items that no other landlords were doing. So I had full occupancy, and basically I did really well out of there. And it's that, remembering that from all those years ago, always upping your standards of the properties that you rent will get you a better yield, I found.
Yeah, and HMOs weren't what they are today back in 1981
no.
when you were doing it. So you mentioned here that you sold your license plate. You've also sold motorbikes to buy houses. You owned your first property, a student HMO. But what made you go on from there to actually become a portfolio landlord and keep buying properties over all these years?
It's just that, seeing the fact that everything, I mean, back in those days, it's not as good now, but every 3 years, properties was doubling and doubling. It was just like, I'd say, why isn't everybody not doing this? Why, because I didn't really start buying new cars until I got, quite a bit older. Anytime I had any spare cash, I'd use it as a deposit to buy a house. Mm-hmm. So, like saying, property is my passion. Many times I have actually treated myself and bought brand new cars or bought new cars, and it's always within months of buying it, an opportunity comes back up. So I have to sell my car to fund houses, but I'll do that in a heartbeat. If I see a property, I'll do that in a heartbeat. Just get rid.
Yeah. And then you get to the place, Anthony Abomini was talking about this when he was on the show as well. You get to a place where your cash flowing assets are giving you the income that you can use to invest in cars and other liabilities, but really start leveling up and living your life. You're not using your income. So were you working full time during the early years when you were building up your property?
Yeah, I worked full time all the way through, actually. I didn't actually leave my job till about 25 years ago. I still work. I still work all the way through, actually, but because I was on a quite well-paid job actually at the time, so I had to have a certain amount before I would leave it.
Yeah, no, and you enjoyed your job. You enjoyed building up the assets. So, tell us a little bit about what your portfolio looks like today.
It's mainly single lets, which I just love single lets. I mean, I went to one of my properties yesterday that I hadn't been to for years because it's all electric. It's just now you have to do electrical certificate. I like single lets, actually. Basically, as long as you get a decent property with a good boiler, you never hear from the tenants. I just love single let. I used to have an HMO. I haven't anymore. I've converted it to serviced. So it's just basically mainly single lets and a few service accommodation, but also I've got a few rent to rents as well, which I got into accidentally. The first one got into accidentally. Property I was buying with a business partner, it fell through because there was a problem with the mine shaft. So I thought, you know what, instead of, it's going to cost us like 45 grand in deposits and refurbs, we ended up renting it instead. I thought, what a fantastic idea. Instead of shelling out tens of thousands of pounds, just rent the asset. Okay, you don't get any of the capital growth, but you're getting all the benefits of the cash flow. Fantastic. So I discovered it by accident. So I thought, as a landlord, I would never have to do rent to rent. I never look down on it, but I thought, well, I own my own properties. But no, I think it's fantastic, actually. For me, especially, I don't really need to buy anymore. So anything else I take on will probably be rent to rent, or maybe the lease extensions, which we were talking about a while back.
This is so interesting because Toyin Ayandari was talking about this as well. She's a developer, you know, Toyin, and she was on the show a few weeks ago. And what she was saying was she got into rent to rent. She does development. It's a capital hungry strategy. She's actually developed tens of buildings now, built up to an 8-figure portfolio. Yet she's still doing rent to rent because it's such a phenomenal cash flow strategy. And there's incredible leverage because, as what you said, instead of needing to put in £45,000 to buy this property to create the cash flow that you wanted, you're then able to put in, you know, a few £1,000 perhaps. And tell us about the cash flow on that first rent to rent property, if you can remember, Rod.
Well, basically, the first rent to rent, because that was service accommodation. The first booking that I got paid the rent basically for 6 months. It was just quite a good booking, you know. So basically, one booking, somebody moved in there for 1 month, and it paid the rent for 6 months. That's the kind of strategy, you know. I was getting.
Yeah, and I know that you have some really good strategies and, you know, original strategies of how to market your service accommodation properties so that they really fly off the shelves, because you're in Birmingham and I've heard people saying that Birmingham is saturated for service accommodation. So I'd love to hear your strategies of how you're keeping your rooms full.
People say it's luck and everything. It's basically all about marketing. Like one of the properties I got in the city centre, I used to call it the reunion pad, because my idea was, hang on, this property is in the centre of Birmingham. It sleeps 10 people. A lot of people, I just thought outside the box. I think there's a lot of people went to university in Birmingham. They now live all over the country, and they all wanted to meet up together. So I call this reunion pad. I marketed it towards that group, ideal for groups to meet up. And it really worked from day one. It was people, hi Rod, we all went to university, but we all live out of the country. Can we rent your place? And basically, they used to come to Birmingham and spend a lot of money to stop in my apartment, but they didn't leave the property. They stopped in, just got pizzas in. They had every intention of going out clubbing because I did it up quite nicely. They all stopped in. So it's all about marketing. It's all about marketing.
Yeah, so you've got your reunion pad, and I know you've got a few other niches where you've named your properties and in a way that's been really attractive for people. Can you give a couple more?
Yeah. Well, one of my properties near a hospital, so I've named it after the hospital. You know, and I just put pictures. The main picture is a picture of the hospital, ideal for people visiting relatives at the hospital, training courses. And lo and behold, it's really good that my marketing works. I read your advert. This is exactly what we're looking for. So it's just like putting the idea into people's heads and thinking outside the box, basically. You know, I mean, during lockdown, I had at one time I had like 5 properties empty, and I went back to basics. I thought, what if there was no Airbnb, no Booking.com? How would I get guests? So I basically handed out leaflets in the street, rang up previous guests, put an advert on Open Rent, and saying I did it as a long-term booking, but with a 2-month break clause. So there were people who were just moved in between house moves or that's moving to the area, and they were happy to pay a premium to rent your property short term. So that was quite a good strategy. So I managed to rent them all.
I love that, because some people within lockdown would have just said, right, I've got 5 properties empty. I need to give them back. I can't do this. This is lockdown. This is not going to work. But this is the power of good questions. Because you just said, because I know that booking.com or Airbnb or both of them closed their calendar. So people couldn't book even if they wanted to at several stages during the lockdown. So you just said, well, what if they didn't exist? What a great question. How could I get guests? And I know, because you told in the Clubhouse how you tell us a story about how you got a whole group of contractors to come in.
Yeah, basically, I was speaking to a friend of mine, you know, Joan, yeah, and I was on the phone. Joan, there's people digging up the road outside, actually. So I went outside and asked them. I said, "Are you new to the area? Are you working there?" "Yeah, we've just moved to the area." "Where are you staying?" And they pointed. "If you're after any accommodation, I've got some." So basically, they were digging up the road, and I invited them to look into my house. The next day, their boss rang and said, "Oh, I heard you've got some houses." They took that house. So have you got another one? They took that. So I managed to fill all my properties just by somebody digging out the road and just handing them a leaflet. That was just like, and another one as well, which is really eerie. You know, the one I was saying, ringing previous guests. I was just thinking about this one guest, this lady who did a few bookings with me. I said, I must give her a call, actually. Guess what happened? What? The phone rang. "Rod, I've noticed that your property's full. I was wondering if could you please find some room for us? We're working in the area." So basically, the power of I don't know. I've got some kind of sixth sense like that. I just thought about it, and she rang me. And you know, so I managed to fill all the properties.
This is the thing. When people get into that mindset of what can I do? How can I fix this? You go out of yourself. And when you think, oh my gosh, this is terrible, I can't do this, then you go inside yourself. But there's so much marketing power in telling everyone what you do. And that is what you did. You went out there and you said to the guys, if you've got somewhere to stay, I've got an amazing place you can stay in, etc. And then you got those long-term bookings to fill it up. And you've been flying high all over lockdown. So I think that's what would you say to people who maybe are in your situation with the single lets and maybe want to boost their cash flow and have thought about rent to rent, but maybe like yourself thought, do you know what, it's not for me because I've already owned my portfolio?
No, I've never got into development because I didn't need to, and I don't really need to now. If I was younger, I probably would get into development. But as my tenants give notice now, I will convert them to service accommodation, maybe. I go for a niche market. I go for contractors. I've got some places that are for leisure guests, and they're doing really well now as well. But and it does work everywhere, actually, because I've got a property that everybody said it won't work there. The air is not fantastic. Parking's not fantastic. It won't work. It's actually my best yielding property after everybody said it wouldn't work. So, you know.
Yeah. So let's talk about one of the areas that people do struggle with, which is about how to find the deals. So you're already an experienced landlord, but how do you get other landlords or letting agents to be able to rent their property to you for you to rent out as serviced? I'd love you to give us some tips and insights into how you do it.
Okay, I'll give you both sides because I actually rent some of my properties to renters as well. So I'll tell you how I approach. The one was a landlord's letter through the letterbox. Luckily it was an unencumbered property, so that was that was actually fine. The next one, it was a new development of apartments, and we approached, and they didn't want SA in there, but after a while getting to know us, we managed to get in. But it was quite hard. It was quite hard at first. But let me tell you the thing about approaching landlords. I've put two times I know people have approached me from open rent. One of them mentioned your training. She's a newbie. Says, "Rod, I just need a start. I've done all this training. I just need a start." And she mentioned that you've done your training. And I thought, let me just give her a go. And she's been absolutely fantastic. To me, I'm thinking, rather than me giving this HMO to a letting agent who's just managing loads of HMOs, this girl is just looking after my property. She's given it 100%. She came to look at this property, right? I said no initially, but in between her looking, she put an advert in spare room, had 12 bookings viewed. She'd printed some leaflets, put them all in the hospital. I thought, wow, I've got to give this girl a go. And she's been absolutely fantastic. And so another one again, she was a newbie, another one of my properties approached me. And I just thought, let me live a go. Somebody's got to start somewhere. And I thought she came over really professional. She had a limited company, even though she wasn't trading. She had her business cards. And I thought, let me give them a go. So everybody, and I think if you are likable, landlords will give you a go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just go there, approach them with confidence, have all your, do all your training. I mean, your book is absolutely fantastic. The person who did the first rent to rent, she'd read your book, and that was a big plus. I know, because I know we've only met a couple of times, but that was a big plus. I thought, hang on, at least she's done a bit of training. She's not just having a go.
Yes, absolutely. She's done the training. And I think there's two different types of people, isn't there? There's people who commit, they go all in, they do the training, they get the full picture, and then they take the action and they really take off. And there's people who try to muffle it together without all the bits in place. And some of the questions that people ask, I just get the feeling they're going in there with the wrong contracts. They're not getting all the information right, and they're putting themselves at risk. That's the thing, Rod. So, but it's useful to hear what your perspective as a landlord, having rent-to-renters come to you and actually seeing it as a positive when they're only going to have, maybe it's their first property, or if not, it might be their second or third, but they've only got a few properties and they're going all in to look after your property and do an amazing job. Rod, the next thing I wanted to talk to you about, because service accommodation properties, typically you do them up to a very nice standard. So in your case, did you invest in other people's properties with your service accommodations, or how did the refurb part of it work for you, Rod?
The apartments I've got with a business partner, they're brand new flats, so it's just a matter of furnishing them. But the one property, we negotiated a rent-free period, but there was quite a bit of decoration to do and things like that. But I know people who spent £29,000 on rent-to-rents. I personally wouldn't spend that much money, but they did get it back within 6 months. If it's a high-yielding one, sometimes you've got to be prepared to put a bit of the money in, because it's different. Like if you do like a buy-to-let, might be able to get away with a bit of paint on your light switches. You can't do that with Airbnb. They'll be giving you a terrible write-up. Seriously, people will say there was paint on the light switch. They just watch too much paint. What's it called? Hotel inspector. So they're just looking for something.
But listen, Rod, £29 is a lot to spend on a refurb of a rent-to-rent. But how much do you typically spend on your refurbs?
On my own ones or rent-to-rent?
Rent-to-rent.
Okay. Just about £2,500, 2.5, £3,000.
Yeah.
If it's just furniture, I can do I just budget £3,000. I just budget £3,000. I mean, one of them, it was like quite a large house that was like 3,800. So
And then typically, I don't want you to tell me the exact details, but just to give people a ballpark, what would your cash flow be on, each month on one of the service accommodations?
Well, basically, a property that you would normally rent for about 600, you'll get at least four times. After your bills, you should clear at least £1,000 off it.
Yeah. So
but I know some of these trainers do SA training. They say you should be happy with £500. But it depends on the size of the property. But if you're getting less than £500, just might as well put it on a single let. To me, I always say.
Yes, very true. So that's great to hear that you're spending max £3,000 on each refurb. You're getting cash flow after all of your costs of £1,000 a month. So within 3 months, you've got your initial investment back, and you're then going into profit, which is fantastic. So we've talked about the finding the deals. We talked about the refurb. What I'd love to talk to you about now is, what are your tips for people who want to get started with this? What would you
tips I would say is I mean, when I first got into property, people kept on telling me I was stupid getting into property. There was no YouTube or books or mentors or anybody to look up to. There's so much free stuff on YouTube to watch, and go along to events as well. Like, well, they used to. I've picked up deals which I didn't take up at these council meetings. A lot of these councils run landlord meetings. There's landlords standing up saying, I've got 6 HMOs. I'm thinking about getting, is anybody interested in buying them or renting them off free? Seriously, it's a fantastic source of picking up deals. I don't really want any, I know it's not my strategy, but there's some really, really good deals to be had there. And there's a lot of tired landlord. I'm a tired landlord, really. I don't want to be doing SA in another year's time. But I know it's a fantastic strategy. So basically, when I'm lining up people now, and I've got somebody in mind to take over, because I'm not going to put them back to buy to let for a few hundred quid a month. If I could show body out, they could actually replace an income if they took on a few of these.
So that's another insight, isn't it, for people who are listening, who want to partner with somebody like yourself, who's running your own service accommodations and run the service accommodations and share in the profits. So it's more of a partnership between you, and they don't have to find the properties. You've already got the properties on board.
Yeah.
So the other thing is,
I'm very much into collaborations. Actually, I'm doing something at the moment with somebody I met recently. We're opening a website for service accommodation. So I'm all for collaborations. I've got, all for collaboration. Somebody approached me about one of my domain names, and I'm going to be opening another business. I'm a great believer in 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I just think about businesses all the while. That pizza business that I told you about earlier. Yeah. This is when I was 16 years old. I went to look at 5 shops and made offers on them. Obviously, nobody take me serious. I was 16. But 4 of these shops were taken over by a company called Gino's Dialer Pizza, who sold out to Perfect Pizza for millions. So I was ahead of my time, but people don't take you seriously when you're younger. So I'm saying, to people who've got kids, if your kids have got ambition, you should always encourage them. Because basically I was told, don't be stupid, you've got to get a job. Don't be silly. Entrepreneurialism is seen like a second best. Well, it used to be.
Yeah, and you were talking earlier, actually, speaking of passing this on, you were talking earlier about your son and how, you've inspired him to get into property investment.
Yeah, he's doing really, really, and he always jokes that he's got a better house than me and bigger house than me. And then he also says that I'll get all yours when you're dead as well. So he's doing really well. He's not just waiting for me to pass it on. He's building his own portfolio and doing really, very, very proud of him. Very proud of him.
Yeah. Well, likewise, the same. I've got an adult son as well, Alex, and he's got his property, his first property, the one that he's living in now. But he's teed up and ready to start with
next one. You get him to refinance.
We will do. He's not had it. He's not had enough. He's not had it for long enough at the moment. But I was going to say, and we've all started in our family stocks and shares investing.
Yes, I did that as well. But I've done that recently as well. Did really, really well, but lost a load because I always thought property was the holy grail. But then I put some in shares and went really, really well, but boom, down. Same as my crypto. Somebody told me about crypto years ago. This virtual currency, and it was £150 for a Bitcoin. And I laughed at him, telling him he's stupid. £150 for a virtual currency? You can't even see it. That same, he's living Marbella, in a really, and I'm on the breadline. Don't know where my next house is coming from. Do you feel sorry for me?
No. But so I'm just interested in stocks and shares because we went into funds as a way, a more diversified risk strategy. But when you're saying yours has gone down, are you buying individual stocks?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's obviously
doing really well, like tech stock as well, which we did really, really well. It's so volatile. You know what? Because I was thinking, bloody hell, the money I've earned on this, I'm going to sell a house and put it all into them. But you know what? You can't beat bricks and mortar. Yeah. And my mum always says, some people always need somewhere to live and they can't make land. My mum's always told me that. My mum's always been very supportive and with my property journey.
Yeah, it's great to have diversified assets here in the UK. I mean, property is a phenomenal asset, and most of the people on the rich list, even if it's not their primary strategy, they invest some of their wealth within property. And I think it's wise to have, money in each asset, property as well as stocks and shares, and the way you do that will differ depending on your risk. Now let's talk about Clubhouse, because it's one of the many areas where people can learn about property free, and it's really insightful, and each time I go on there I'm learning so much. And that's how, Rod, I've got to know you more since we've both been on Clubhouse. And I want you to talk to us about your club on Clubhouse. It's the New to Property Club. So talk to us about that, why you started it, what it's all about.
Well, there's there's a lot of people into the bigger developments and commercial and building property. I always like to help the little people who want to take that first step. That's always been my passion, actually.
Yeah.
To help the people who want to take that first step. So, over the years, I didn't even know it was called mentoring, but I've been like helping people. What if my tenants don't pay? Well, you can take an insurance policy if they don't pay, and you reference them. What if the boiler breaks down? What you can do? I've just been reassuring people that it's a good thing to do. So this New to Property was just like an idea, like to helping people on those first steps to getting into property. What's the best strategy for them? I mean, next week we're talking about extending leases, which I thought was a fantastic idea. I mean, I've come across leases with properties with short leases, but I've just avoided them, thinking, oh, you can't get a mortgage. Even I'm learning on Clubhouse. It's fantastic.
Yes.
And Clubhouse, you can wear what you want to. Look, I didn't even realize it's going to be filmed. I'd have put a shirt and tie on to make me not look like a hood.
You look like a property investor.
No, yeah.
You don't need to wear a suit.
No, I should have a label at least. You know what I mean?
Well, so you've got your New to Property Club at the moment. It's on Mondays at 8 p.m. But you can check out the latest events at new2property.club. That's new2property.club, and I've got that on the screen if you are watching on YouTube, or on the podcast, we'll put it into the show notes. new2property.club, Mondays 8 p.m. And as Rod said, we're going to be talking about extending leases, how you can buy flats with short leases and extend those leases and really be able to add a phenomenal amount of value. And the other thing that I'll be excited to contribute in that conversation is buying blocks of flats or multiple units all on one title, because then you can split the titles. And again, that is an uplift of the value. So it's so phenomenally valuable, this club, and such a great vibe. So do join us on the Clubhouse app. It's the audio only app. It's now available on Apple and also on Android.
You can wear whatever you want to. Nobody can see you.
Yeah, you can turn up as you please.
Yeah.
From bed.
We're saying about the extending the leases. I saw a flat. I told you about that flat I saw. It's £42,000 because it had a short lease. I decided against it because I would have had to buy it cash, and I didn't want to, tie it up for too long. But you could have bought that flat for £42,000, extended the lease for £8,000, so your total investment would be 50. This is 2 years ago. It was. They're now going for £110,000. So it's a great way. You could have actually bought that, extended the lease, refinance, not only taken your money out, but you could have triggered a cashback on that. You'd have had about 20 grand cash back.
Yeah.
If I knew there was a profit in there, but I couldn't be bothered. I thought, it means, and I didn't realize you could get mortgages on them. You can actually get mortgages on short leases, because a lot of agents say, you can't get a mortgage, but you can actually get a mortgage on them. It's just that not as long.
Yeah, it's just having the experience and having the expertise. It's having the knowledge, isn't it? And that's one of the things you can get on Clubhouse. So it's just there's just so much out there that's so exciting. And when people say, okay, well, it was okay for you, you started in 1980, but there's opportunities all the time. So there's opportunities right now in 2021 that people in 20 years' time, we'll be saying, in 2041, people will be saying, oh, well, it was okay for you back in 2021. Things were different then, things were easier. But
Yeah.
actually, you've always got to have that courage to take the next step, whatever the timing is, because there were very people who were around in 1981 who said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to buy it. I'm worried about what if the tenants don't pay. I'm worried about what if the boiler breaks. So you still had to be courageous and take the steps and make the most of the opportunities that were presented to you. So Rod, it's been phenomenal you joining us today. I so enjoy you being with us and the conversations. I love your entrepreneurial spirit, the way that you got started early, the way you've kept going, the way that you share your knowledge. And just as we draw the conversation to a close, I'd love it if you could just share your parting thoughts with the viewers and listeners today.
Well, what I always say is, well, about property, it's like taking a loan out that somebody else pays. That's the way I like to think about it. Take a loan. Forget that. Like I say, I know some people buying cars. They're 19, they're leasing these Audis for £500 a month, and I'm thinking, just get into property, get your first property. The money, if you pick the right property, it will pay for the lease on that Audi. Yeah, that property that you buy for 100 grand or whatever will pay for lease on that Audi, and in 2 years' time, you get your money deposit back that you paid for that property. It's just, I'd say it's the best thing I've ever done. So, stocks and shares are fantastic. Crypto is actually fantastic. I still invest in number plates. I still invest in domain names. I've invested in some startups, but you cannot beat property. So, get into property if you can.
Yeah, exactly. That well-known saying, get into property and wait. Don't wait to get into don't wait to get into property. Get into property and wait. Because some of those properties that you bought for under 20 grand, in 1981, are worth well over 100,000, would you say now?
Oh God, yeah, well over that. But you're saying that about getting into property and don't wait. I know people have been waiting 3-4 years for a recession. They're not buying yet because of Brexit. There's going to be a recession. They're not buying because of other things are going to be a recession. In that time, I bought properties that have gone up quite a lot. Where they're still waiting. If you leave your 20 grand deposit in the bank for 2 years, earning 0.01% or something, your savings have actually gone down, haven't they? Really?
Yeah, they have. That's the truth of it. So thank you so much, Rod, for joining us today. Thank you for watching and for listening. We love to have you with us. It just would not be the same without you. So that is it for this week. We hope you've enjoyed it. And remember, until next week, believe bigger, be bolder, be a game changer. See you then. Thank you, Rod.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.